People ask me all the time if I've ever seen anything strange out here. I tell them sure, plenty of weird stuff happens in national parks. People go missing, weather shifts in ways it shouldn't. There's a lot of space in these woods for things to get lost or stay hidden. But I used to laugh off the ghost stories. The so-called Smoky Mountain cult rumors said they were just bored hikers trying to freak each other out. I was a ranger. I dealt in facts, trail erosion, wildlife reports, drunk campers. All that changed the night I found Matt, or the night Matt found me. Back in spring, we started getting the usual seasonal uptick in weird calls. Campers claiming to hear chanting. Some said they saw people standing in the trees just watching. Others reported tents slashed open, belongings scattered. But nobody ever saw who did it. No tracks, no trail cams triggered. Most of the calls came from deep in the backcountry, north of Klingman's Dome, areas where cell signal drops out completely, even on a good day. We'd file a report, calm the tourists, and blame raccoons or kids trying to scare their friends. I didn't buy any of it. The Smokies are full of stories, feral people, ghosts, cryptids. You work here long enough, you start filtering out the noise. Matt didn't buy it either. He'd been my friend for almost a decade. We'd served together in Afghanistan, ended up in forestry after we got out. He was steady, reliable, didn't jump at shadows. So when he went missing, that's when I started listening. He was covering a solo patrol up near a remote trailhead called Flat Rock Hollow. Nothing too intense, just a night hike and a quick sweep to verify a campsite complaint. He radioed in at 8:14 p.m., said everything looked clear. That was the last time anyone heard from him. Next morning, when dispatch didn't get his morning check-in, I volunteered to head up. I found his truck right where it should be. Keys still in the ignition, radio still on, but the trail was quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no wind. Even the bugs had gone silent. Half a mile up, I found his flashlight, still on, lying in the mud. That's when the cold settled in my stomach. Matt wouldn't have dropped it. Not him. We launched a full-scale search that afternoon. Rangers, SAR teams, even dogs. 3 days straight, and we came up with nothing. Not a single footprint, not even a broken branch. It was like he stepped off the trail and just dissolved. The official story was he probably fell, got lost, succumbed to exposure. But I couldn't let it go. I kept going back up there on my own time, retracing every inch. I wasn't thinking like a ranger anymore. I was thinking like a friend. I started sleeping in the bunkhouse near the hollow trailhead, kept a notebook, tracked every hiker who passed through. That's when I started noticing patterns. Solo hikers, especially men, reporting strange dreams. More damaged tents, more reports of whispering voices in the trees, always around dusk. Always in the same quadrant of the woods. I even found one campsite with 3 uneaten freeze-dried meals laid out on a log. Like the campers had been about to sit down for dinner and just stood up and walked away. No sign of struggle, no animal prints, just 3 chairs facing the fire. I started asking around, quietly. Locals mentioned the same name again and again, the Hollow Ones. Some said it was just a folktale. Others swore they'd seen people in the woods with carved masks. Said they lived underground, worshipped something older than the mountains. Sounded like backwoods paranoia. Still, I wrote it down. One night I was doing a solo sweep around Brush Ridge. I'd brought my dog Roscoe for company. Halfway up the trail he stopped cold, hackles raised, started whining, refused to move forward. That's when I heard it, chanting. Not loud, not shouting, but low, rhythmic. Almost like a heartbeat made out of voices. Roscoe backed away, tail between his legs. I'd never seen him like that before. I pushed ahead, ducked through a thicket and saw a faint glow flickering through the trees. At first I thought it was a campfire, but it was coming from the base of a rock wall I'd never seen before. Half covered by vines was a narrow opening, a cave. I shouldn't have gone in alone. I knew that, but something about that narrow crack in the rocks pulled at me, like gravity, like whatever was inside wanted to be found. I ducked low, stepping just inside the mouth of the cave. Only a few feet in. The walls felt wrong, smooth in a way that didn't seem natural. There was no airflow, no echo, just dead silence. But that faint chanting, it was still there, somewhere deep beneath the ground. I marked the entrance with survey tape and GPS. Wrote it up in the logbook as an undocumented cavity. Nothing special. But I didn't report the sound, or the firelight I thought I saw inside, or how my dog refused to go anywhere near it. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept seeing things behind my eyelids. Carved masks, firelight dancing on stone, and faces, smiling where smiles shouldn't be. The next morning, I pulled out every archived map I could find. Nothing showed a cave near that trail. Not one. But then I found an old file folder stuffed in the back of the cabinet. Paper maps from the 1940s, faded pencil marks and handwritten notes. One of them had a rough charcoal sketch with a black X near Brush Ridge. Next to it, scrawled in block letters, "Hollow sealed, do not enter." There was supposed to be an incident report with it, but the paperclip was empty. Just a brown rust stain where it had once been. No report, no explanation. I started asking around again. Casual questions at first. One of the older rangers, Jim Clemens, retired now, told me something that stuck. He said back in the 70s there'd been strange activity in that region. Hikers going missing, some found days later in a daze, barefoot, covered in scratches. One fire lookout worker slit his wrists after reporting people singing under the ground. Park Service sent in a team to seal off part of the cave network. Then, they buried the whole thing. No official report, no press, just silence. Clemens wasn't the superstitious type, but he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You ever hear drums in the woods, son? You walk the other way. No matter what." I tried to laugh it off, but something in his voice stayed with me. From there, everything started unraveling. I reviewed body cam footage, trail cams, radio logs, found inconsistencies. One trail cam near Flat Rock Hollow had 3 straight weeks of footage, until the night Matt disappeared. Then it cut off for 12 hours. When it came back on, the lens was scratched. Nothing else was touched. Another camera, deeper into the valley, had one frame, just one, where something was standing behind a tree. Not a person. Too tall, too thin, wearing something on its head. It looked like horns, or maybe roots. It was only in that one frame, gone the next second. I didn't report it, just pocketed the card and moved on. Meanwhile, the sightings kept coming in. Campers hearing voices in the woods, fires built with no one around. One group said they saw a man with a deer skull on his face watching them from the ridge. They thought it was a prank, until he didn't move for 2 straight hours. Just stood there, silent, smiling. I tried to rationalize it all. Vandalism, hoaxes, maybe even Matt himself, confused, injured, wandering out there. But I didn't believe that anymore. Not really. Deep down, I knew something was wrong with that part of the forest. It felt heavy, like the air itself didn't want you there. I started noticing the birds never went near that side of the ridge. No squirrels, no tracks, like everything alive knew to stay away. One morning I went up early to check the cave entrance again. Roscoe came with me like always, but when we got within 100 yards, he stopped dead. Hackles up, tail tucked. He let out a low, trembling whine and turned back on his own. I'd never seen him do that, not even around black bears. That same day, I found something new near the cave. A crude figure made of twigs and strips of faded red cloth. It was stuck in the dirt right beside the entrance, like a marker or a warning. Still, I didn't go in. Not yet. That night, I had a dream. I was walking through the woods at night, holding a lantern. The trees bent over me like they were watching, and in the distance, I could hear the chanting again, closer this time. When I reached the clearing, there were people standing in a circle, wearing masks. They didn't move, they didn't speak, they just stared at me, and every single one of them had the same grin. Too wide, lips pulled too far back, like the skin on their faces didn't quite fit. When I woke up, my bedsheets were damp with sweat. Roscoe was pacing in the living room, whining at the door. And my boots, my hiking boots, were caked in fresh dirt. I hadn't worn them in days. That was the last straw. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers. Whether it was some twisted backwoods cult or just the ghost of my own guilt over Matt, I had to see it through. I charged my headlamp, packed a sidearm, extra batteries, 2 knives and a flare. I didn't tell anyone. I left a note in my cabin in case I didn't come back. I reached the cave just before dusk. The forest was silent, completely silent. Even the wind had stopped. And as I stepped into that narrow crack in the earth, ducking beneath the hanging vines and brushing past the figure in the ground, I told myself one last time, this is about Matt. That's all. Just find out what happened to Matt. Then get out. I didn't know that down there, beneath the surface, they were already waiting for me, smiling. I stepped through the narrow entrance, the mouth of the cave swallowing up the last of the daylight behind me. My headlamp cast a tight, cold beam on the slick stone ahead. Every sound echoed too long. My own breathing sounded foreign. I moved slow, marking the walls with chalk every 10 paces. The tunnel dipped sharply, almost like a natural staircase. The walls were too smooth in places, like something had worn them down deliberately over time. I thought it would be a tight squeeze the whole way, but after 20 minutes of steady descent, the tunnel opened up. It became a kind of natural hallway, wide enough to walk upright. My boots crunched over old stone and debris. Water dripped steadily from somewhere up above, rhythmic like a leaky faucet. The air down there was damp, but strangely warm. It smelled faintly of burnt wood and wet leaves. I stopped every few minutes to listen. At first, all I could hear was the drip-drip of water echoing in the dark. But as I moved deeper, the air changed. My ears popped. The silence turned heavier. It's hard to describe, but it felt like I had passed through some invisible membrane. And then I heard it again. The chanting. Distant. Faint. It came in waves, almost like the walls were breathing it in and out. I froze in place and listened, trying to parse the rhythm. It wasn't any language I knew, just syllables, hummed and whispered, over and over. I moved forward. Eventually, I found a torch. A real old-fashioned torch wedged into the rock wall, the end blackened from use. But no flame, no smoke, just the leftovers of a fire burned long ago. Nearby, I found another one, and beside that, something worse, a pile of small bones, animal I hoped, but I couldn't be sure. They were arranged in a circle with the skull dead center. A stone had been placed in the skull's mouth, like an offering. The chanting was clearer now, and it was coming from below. I found another drop, a steep passage like a stone slide. I tied off a rope to a thick outcrop and rappelled down, maybe 30 feet. When I landed, the smell hit me harder. Smoke, sweat, and something else. Something sweet and rotting like old fruit left too long in the heat. There were markings on the walls now, carvings, crude stick figures etched in spirals and lines. Some had extra limbs, others had their faces scratched out. The deeper I went, the more frequent they became, almost like I was passing through a series of warnings, or maybe invitations. I kept walking. Eventually, the tunnel widened into a sort of antechamber. My headlamp flicked across the walls and landed on a set of crude totems. Sticks and twine, fabric stained with what looked like dried blood. One of them was nailed to the wall with a sharpened animal bone. The cloth tied around its neck was familiar, green canvas. Same shade as our ranger jackets. I stopped breathing for a second. I raised the light. There were more of them. 5, maybe 6, hanging from the walls, arranged in a semicircle. Each one had some scrap of clothing woven into it. Bootlaces, zippers, strips of nylon. I backed away, almost turned around, but then I heard something new. A voice. Not part of the chant. It was slurred, soft, like someone trying to wake up from a bad dream. Where am I? It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. Matt. I spun in place, scanning the tunnel. I shouted his name. Nothing. Then again, faintly. Is someone there? It was him. I took off running. The tunnel curved sharply, then opened wider again. I passed another series of torches. These were lit, real flames. The flickering light danced across the rock, creating shadows that moved just a second too slow. I slowed down, every part of my body screaming to turn around. But I kept going. The heat intensified. The air tasted like ash. Then I reached a threshold. The passage opened into a vast cavern. The ceiling rose into blackness overhead. The floor was dirt, not stone, packed hard by years of footsteps. Dozens of torches lined the walls. In the center of the chamber was a massive fire pit, flames roaring, snapping high. The chanting was louder now. Surrounding the fire were figures, 20, maybe 30 of them. They moved in slow, ritualistic patterns, circling the flame, swaying. Their bodies were painted in thick lines of soot and red clay. Some wore robes, others were shirtless, scarred, but they all wore masks, not store-bought masks. These were handmade, bark, bone, animal hide. Some covered the whole face, others only half. One had long teeth carved from wood. Another looked like a rotted deer skull fused with something human. The eyes behind the masks glinted orange in the firelight. They didn't notice me at first. I crouched behind a natural pillar of stone, peeking out just enough to see the scene. In the center of the circle was a large flat rock, raised slightly, and on that rock was Matt. He was kneeling, hands bound, head bowed. His face was pale, gaunt, like he hadn't eaten in days. His lips moved slowly, like he was trying to speak but couldn't find the words. I wanted to run to him, but I couldn't move. The cultists moved in unison. Their chanting rose and fell in waves. I couldn't understand it. It sounded ancient, guttural, but rhythmic, like a song without melody. Then the fire changed color. For just a moment, it flared blue, then orange again, then something else. The figures stopped moving. Every single one froze mid-step. Silence. They turned, slowly, not toward Matt, toward the rock pillar I was hiding behind. Like they knew I was there. I ducked back, breath caught in my throat. Then I felt it, a hand, on my shoulder. I nearly screamed, spun around with my flashlight raised. It was Matt. He was standing there, groggy, pale, but alive. His eyes were bloodshot, lips cracked, but he looked at me like he recognized me. "Where am I?" he said again, barely audible. I stared at him, then glanced back toward the fire. The figures were still, completely still, and they were smiling, every single one. That smile wasn't human. It was wide, too wide, like their skin had been stretched to hold it. Lips peeled back, teeth exposed, the same exact grin on every face. Unblinking. Watching. I grabbed Matt's arm. "We're leaving," I whispered. We turned to run. They didn't follow. They just watched, still smiling. I led him back through the tunnels, retracing my steps, stumbling through the flickering shadows. Matt kept asking where he was, what happened. I told him to keep moving. Every few seconds I'd glance back. No one behind us, but I could still feel them, like heat on the back of my neck. When we reached the rope drop, I practically carried Matt up. He was weak, but he climbed. We burst out of the cave like we were being chased, but nothing followed us. The forest around us was still, too still. No wind, no sounds, not even birdsong. The only thing I could hear was our ragged breathing. I doubled over, hands on my knees, trying to steady my heart. Then I looked at Matt. He was standing completely upright, not out of breath, not sweating, just staring at the tree line. "Matt," I said. He didn't move. "Matt." Slowly he turned to look at me, blank eyes, like he didn't recognize me. Then his expression softened. "You okay?" he asked, voice flat. I nodded cautiously. "Are you?" He smiled. Not the creepy smile from before, a regular one, familiar. "Yeah, I think so, just tired." It was almost enough to settle me. Almost. We started walking toward the trail. I kept glancing sideways at him. He moved like normal. Feet dragging a little, shoulders hunched like he was coming down from adrenaline. It was Matt, or at least it looked like him. I started to believe it. Then I heard him muttering under his breath. I couldn't make out the words, just low, rhythmic syllables. I thought maybe he was talking to me. "What?" I asked. He stopped walking, looked up, confused. "What? You were saying something." "I wasn't. You were." "I was humming." "You weren't humming." He smiled again. "Okay, maybe I was praying." That threw me. "Since when do you pray?" He shrugged. "Guess I picked it up somewhere." Then he walked on like nothing happened. We made it about a quarter mile before I noticed he was walking slower. I slowed to match him. He wasn't limping. He wasn't tired. He was just dragging. Not like someone exhausted, more like someone waiting. I turned to look at him again. He was staring into the trees, like he was listening. I followed his gaze. Nothing there. "You see something?" He blinked, then smiled. "Nope, just zoning out. Sorry." Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of bark. Curved, smoothed, looked like it had been carved. There were symbols etched into it. "What's that?" He turned it over in his fingers. A souvenir, I guess. I stopped walking. From where? He didn't answer. Then, as if noticing my stare, he laughed. Relax. I found it outside the cave. Just thought it looked weird. He tucked it back into his pocket. We walked in silence for a while after that. Then he said, "You think they were people?" "What?" "The ones down there." I didn't answer. He looked at me. "I mean, they wore skin like people. They moved like people, but they weren't, right?" I stopped. "Matt, what do you remember?" He paused, frowned, shook his head. "Nothing. That's the thing. Just flashes." I turned away. Then he said, "What if they're in the trees now?" I spun back to him. "Why would you say that?" He smiled. "Just kidding." Then looked away again like it was nothing. We kept going. When we reached the truck, I opened the passenger side and waited. Matt just stood there, staring at the door like he didn't remember how to open it. Then suddenly he snapped out of it. "You driving, or am I?" "You're not driving." "Fair." He got in, no hesitation now, buckled up like normal, slouched into the seat. I got behind the wheel. He leaned his head back, let out a long breath. "This feels weird," he said.
What does?
"Being out, being back." I nodded. "Yeah, like, the sky's too big now." I didn't know what to say. We drove for a while. I kept stealing glances at him. Sometimes he looked totally normal, calm, silent, just staring out the window. Then he'd twitch, just a little, a facial spasm, a hand jerk, and he'd go still again. 15 minutes in, he started giggling. Just once, soft and high, like someone had told a joke only he could hear. Then he stopped, cleared his throat, looked at me. "What's wrong?" he said. I didn't answer. He turned back to the window. A minute later, he said, "Sorry, my brain's still rebooting." I forced a laugh. "Yeah, I get that." "Do you?" he said, tone flat. I looked at him again. He wasn't smiling now, just watching me. A second later, he blinked and grinned. "I'm just messing with you, man." He laughed like he used to, big belly laugh. For a second, I laughed too. Then he said, "You think they followed us?" I stopped laughing. "What?" He didn't repeat it. I pulled off onto a dirt service road so he could piss. He said, "Give me a minute," and walked into the trees. I leaned on the hood of the truck, tried to breathe. I told myself he was just in shock, just recovering, that it was stress, hallucinations, psychological trauma. That's what I told myself. Until I heard him talking, quiet, steady, like a one-sided conversation. I walked toward the tree line, slowly. I could see his silhouette just ahead. He was facing away. His hands were at his sides. And he was whispering. Not panicked, not scared. Calm, rhythmic. I stopped 10 feet behind him. "What do you want me to do?" he said. "Yes, I understand." "I'll try." Then silence. "Matt?" I said. He didn't move. "Matt!" He turned slowly. The shadows shifted across his face. He looked like himself again. Smiled. "All good," he said. "Just had to go." "You were talking." "Huh?" "I heard you." He raised his eyebrows. "To myself, maybe." "You said you'd try." He paused, then smiled wider. "I don't remember saying that." He walked past me back to the truck. I followed. Back on the road, he was quiet. 5 minutes later, he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out something small and round. A tooth. Human. He held it up between his fingers, squinting at it. "Do you think this is mine?" he asked. He looked down at the tooth, shrugged, dropped it out the window. "Guess I don't need it." I drove the rest of the way without saying another word. When we pulled into the ranger station, everyone came rushing out like we'd returned from the dead. People clapped me on the back, hugged Matt, shouted questions. Matt smiled, answered like himself. He cracked jokes, told people he didn't remember much but was just glad to be alive. They bought it. I didn't, because every now and then, between sentences, he'd go still. His eyes would drift off toward the woods, and his lips would move silently. I was the only one watching closely enough to notice. That night, they let him sleep in the infirmary. I stayed nearby, didn't sleep, just watched. Through the little window in the door, I saw him laying on the cot. At first. Then he was sitting up, Then he was pacing. At one point, he knelt on the floor, placed something in front of him. A small bundle of sticks, arranged in a circle. Then he stood and crushed it with his heel. I blinked, and he was back in bed. Next morning, he was cheerful. Too cheerful. Said he'd had a weird dream. Didn't remember it. Just colors, faces. Everything's fine now, he said. That was when I knew. Everything was not fine. Matt stayed at the station for 3 more days, slept during the day, took long walks at night. Nobody questioned it. Everyone figured he was just shaken up, processing the trauma. And when he smiled, laughed, acted like his old self, people were eager to believe he was okay. Maybe I wanted to believe it too. Maybe that's why I didn't say anything when I saw the way he'd sometimes freeze mid-sentence and stare into the trees, or when I'd catch him humming that same off-rhythm chant under his breath and then acting like he hadn't, or the way he'd trace those strange spiral symbols onto the fogged glass of the window beside his bunk, only to wipe it away if he saw me looking. He asked me not to tell anyone about what we saw in the cave. Said people would just think we were crazy, that it wouldn't help anything. I didn't argue. I was barely holding it together myself. The memory of those grinning faces, the fire, the masks, the way they stood, not moving, not blinking, just watching us. I couldn't stop seeing it. Every time I closed my eyes, they were there, waiting. I tried to go back to work. Desk duty at first. Sorting permits, logging visitor complaints. I couldn't focus. I'd zone out for minutes at a time, staring at the tree line beyond the window, heart racing for no reason. I stopped going home. Slept at the station, gun under my pillow, lights always on. I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid. But then things started happening. The first time was subtle. A note appeared on my desk. No envelope, just a scrap of paper with a message in shaky block letters. You were not invited. I thought it was a prank. But nobody admitted to leaving it. The handwriting didn't match anyone at the station. That night, I found another one, tucked under my windshield wiper. Same style, different message. He still smiles when you're not looking. I confronted Matt the next morning. He laughed. A real, belly-deep laugh. Then he said, "What kind of sick bastard would do that?" I stared at him. He stared right back. No smile, just a blank, calm expression. Then he blinked and said, "Seriously, that's messed up. We should file a report." He was good at pretending, but I knew. I watched him that whole day. Every time he thought no one was looking, he'd wander toward the woods. Stand still, close his eyes, breathe deep, like the trees were feeding him something. That night, I followed him. He left around 1 a.m., no flashlight, just walked out the back of the station and into the trees like he'd done it 100 times before. I kept my distance. The moon was high. The forest was silent. He walked straight for a quarter mile, then stopped in a small clearing I didn't recognize. He stood there for a long time. Then he started whispering. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see his mouth moving. Rhythmic, familiar. I raised my phone to record. That's when he turned around and looked straight at me. I hadn't made a sound, hadn't moved, but he knew I was there. He didn't call out, didn't speak. He just smiled. That wide, awful grin. It stretched too far, way too far. His eyes didn't match the smile. They stayed cold, empty. I lowered the phone, stepped back. He didn't follow, didn't speak, just turned around and walked back to the station like nothing happened. The next day, I submitted my resignation. Didn't even tell them why. Just said I needed out. They were surprised, but didn't push it. Maybe they saw it in my eyes. I stayed one more night in the bunkhouse. Packed up a few things. Burned my journal in the fire pit out back. I couldn't risk anyone reading it. Some truths don't help anyone. I went to say goodbye to Matt. He was in the common room, watching a rerun of some old nature documentary. When I told him I was leaving, he stood up, gave me a firm handshake, looked me in the eye. "Probably for the best," he said. "You've been looking tired." "Yeah. Too much time in the woods will do that to a man." Then he smiled again, just a normal one. But I couldn't be sure anymore. I walked away without another word, slept with the lights on, gun close. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. My last night in the Smokies, I woke up around 3 a.m. Thought I heard someone whisper my name. The cabin was cold, too cold. I sat up in bed and saw the window was open. I was sure I'd locked it. There were footprints outside, bare feet, leading up to the glass. I closed it, locked it, went back to bed, didn't sleep. At dawn, I loaded up my truck and left. Didn't look back. I made it about an hour down the mountain when I stopped at a gas station to fill up. Took a piss, got coffee. When I came back to the truck, there was a new note on the windshield, same shaky handwriting. He's not the only one. I dropped it, got in the truck, drove until I couldn't keep my eyes open, slept in a Walmart parking lot with the doors locked and a knife under my seat. Weeks went by. I moved states, got a job at a gear shop, nothing big, just enough to pay rent and keep busy. I told myself I was fine, that it was all behind me. But every now and then, I'd find things. A sprig of pine tucked into my mailbox. A spiral drawn on the sidewalk outside my apartment. One morning, my dog refused to go near the closet. Barked at it until I opened it up. Inside was a piece of carved bark. Same symbols. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Then, a month later, I saw Matt again. Or someone that looked like him. I was walking to my car after work. It was raining. I passed an alley between two buildings, and there he was, just standing in the dark, smiling. That grin, too wide, teeth too white, unmoving. I blink and he was gone. No footprints, no sound. I convinced myself it was stress, a hallucination, until 2 nights later. I woke up to whispering from inside my apartment. I grabbed my gun, cleared every room. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, but my back door was open, just a crack. And the floor near it was wet, like someone had stood there, dripping. I closed it, sat in the living room with the lights on until morning. Then I drove. No destination, just away. Anywhere. I stayed in motels, slept with the TV on. I stopped answering calls. I deleted social media. I left my old life behind completely. And still, they found me. I told myself I'd never go back. I meant it. But over time, something started gnawing at me. I'd wake up with the sensation that I'd forgotten something, left something unfinished in the dark. It wasn't guilt. It was something heavier, like gravity. Like the cave itself had hooked something into me, a tether. I tried to ignore it, tried to drown it in routine, but it kept pulling, kept whispering. Some mornings I'd find myself staring at maps of the park again, tracing the roads, looking for Brush Ridge. Part of me was terrified, but another part, the part that had started to dream in chance, felt like I didn't have a choice, like if I didn't go back, they'd come for me anyway. Last week I came back to the Smokies, not by choice. I woke up in my motel bed in Georgia, window open, and on the nightstand, another note. This one handwritten, perfect cursive. Come home. So I did, one last time. I drove through the park just before dusk. The trees looked different, thinner, taller, like they were leaning in. I parked at the old ranger station. It was closed, empty, but the door was unlocked. Inside, everything was dust-covered, deserted, but one thing had changed. On the bulletin board above the radio, someone had pinned a map, a hand-drawn map, with a spiral trail leading to the cave. The word "open" written in red ink. I should have run. Instead, I followed it. I hiked for hours. The forest grew quieter with each step. When I reached the cave, the sun was setting. The mouth gaped wide. No vines, no rubble, just a dark, yawning hole waiting for me. And beside it, standing perfectly still, was Matt. Or something wearing his face. He didn't speak, just raised his hand and pointed to the cave. I didn't move. He smiled. Then the woods around me came alive with whispers. From every direction, hundreds of voices, chanting, laughing, calling my name. I turned and ran. Didn't stop until I collapsed in the dirt by the trailhead. When I looked back, there was nothing there, just trees and silence. I left that night, haven't gone back, and I won't. Because I know now, they let us leave, but they didn't let us go. And some part of Matt, never came back out of that cave. And now, they want me too.